Very good. Look, this is why this is important. If you are associated as a broker with a fraudster, as I tell my kid, you're defined by the people you keep, that lender will no longer work with you, and you're going to get caught up in that web. So I'm going to be talking about tips to protect you, and also to protect the lender. Lenders don't want to do fraudulent deals, and this stuff is becoming more and more prevalent. So the reason why I talk about this is not to teach you how to do it. Is to identify it and protect your reputation. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to do the 3 big fraud stories this year. I'm going to go through that. Oh, what we started doing is we do certificates of participation. This is considered training for your lenders. So give your card to Joseph and he'll email it to you. And if you're brokers, you want to do that, the banks are asking what we do for training. Okay, here are the 2 people we're going to talk about. Actually, I'm talking about 3. Nick Patel pulled off a $180 million fraud on the USDA DNI loan program. $180 million. This is a nice mugshot of him on a DUI arrest. He had 2, by the way. Carrie Agee, banks are the largest loan service provider. This is her BUI mugshot. Boating under intoxication. So I'm going to talk about that. Here are my top 10 takeaways. Don't lie to the government. Mike Brosnan and I decided we want to form a restaurant. And I'm going to put in $100 grand and he's going to put in $100 grand. Checking account, well, I have no intention of putting in $100 grand. Mike puts in his money and I withdraw it and spend it. Okay, that's a civil action. You can take me to court and we can work it out. If Mike's a bank and I'm going to apply for that loan and the bank's going to give $100,000 and I'm going to put up $100,000 as equity injection, I don't do that. That's bank fraud. So don't lie to the government. It's very, very, all this stuff, these people got involved with lying to the government. Understand basic SBA eligibility rules. I'm going to give you a couple. When you see them, run. Use Google Earth and LinkedIn as your friend. I believe very strongly as brokers, you should identify that equity management up front and tell the lender exactly where it is. I'm going to talk about system award management, the list of departments and bad people the government doesn't want to do business with. I'm going to give you a marketing tip on how to use the SBA data to your advantage and also how to verify. Trust but verify documents. Be very, very careful on doing business with, quote, the smartest person in the room. Those people were the smartest people in the room. And they told everyone they were. So, the consistent theme is these people are convinced, and they tell everyone they're the smartest people in the room. I'm going to, sort of what I did last year, I'm going to tell you about the client projections, I'll do that. And the last one should be number 1. I had an amazing conversation with a gentleman last night, lender, on email spoofing and website spoofing. He got an application from a borrower. The borrower gave the Bank of America link to verify his data. He went in, balances, bank statements. It was spoofed. He looked at it, it was like Bank of America 2345. So I'm going to talk about that as well. So that's probably number 10. Identify who you're doing business with. Okay, let's talk about Nick Patel. Back in the day, for those of you who remember, there was fraud by a rogue employee for BLX. And he was a pretty sophisticated fraud. They went through, faked cashier's checks, actually got some of them the IRS to verify the tax returns, got another lender involved who verified cash deposits. Very time consuming. Nick was a lot smarter than that. What Nick would do, he found an investor who bought $180 million worth these loans. 16 pages he put together. A 4-page note, an assumption agreement, a sale agreement, 2-page credit write-up, scanned it in, emailed it to an investor, got a $10 million check a day later. A lot easier to do it that way than to create all this files. Everything was made up. Everything. And to show how egregious this was, he put 26 of these. Now, his first couple loans were legit. And then he said, it's too much work. But this is for USDA. This is something for rural America. And these loans were out of Orlando. One was for preschool in Orlando. I've been to Orlando. I don't think it's rural. So he did that. 2013, he did this between 2012 and 2014. 2013, I actually gave a speech that Nick was there. Guess what my speech was about? It was for investors in the secondary market. My speech was, gang, you better be careful because there's a lot of Photoshop stuff going around. He was in the audience and I was speaking to those investors. The investor did due diligence, and all of a sudden got really, really nervous when he found out there was a property that didn't exist. So they go to the USDA. The USDA said, this stuff's all made up. He gets arrested, 5 counts of loan fraud. He convinces the judge, okay, I made a mistake, but I'll help you recoup the losses. And what always happens is they think they can get away with it. He bought a $4 million mansion, numerous luxury cars. He had an affinity for luxury watches. He loved to go to Panama to, quote, blow off steam on a private jet. So he spent a lot of money. He personally bought 5 hotels. So now you have a guy, awesome, has all this wealth and no one's asking these questions. He held a fundraiser for Governor Rick Scott out of Orlando. So he went high profile and flashing all this money around. After a couple of years, the receiver gets as much money as he came back. And then they're saying, Nick, you got to come to Chicago. Your sentencing is on Tuesday. And we don't know what your flight is. And Nick said, sorry, I've been busy. I'll book it Monday. They tracked him. FBI's not stupid. They tracked him from his house to a private jet in Ecuador. Waiting for him in Ecuador is $500,000, 3 luxury cars, $1 million home, a private chef, and a tutor for their 4 daughters. The FBI says, Nick, where are you going? I got political asylum in Ecuador, and here's my India passport to prove it. I forgot to tell you one other interesting point, how brazen the scheme was. While he was on bail, he did 2 more $20 million worth of fraudulent loans. They put him on a bus to Oklahoma City. They had him on tape, listening in. I'm going to his partner and saying, this closes up the deal. 5 days after he was arrested, he did another bogus loan. So the takeaway on this stuff is know what you're dealing with, and let's be really, really careful. He got sentenced to 25 years in jail, and he's going to be out in 2039. Let's talk about Mesa. This one I'm more conflicted with. Nick was a criminal. He deserved everything he got. This company, they're the largest loan service provider in the country, loan service provider, and they do servicing, and they do underwriting, collection, liquidation. The trouble is they cut corners. And they tried to figure out how to make the deal work. And this is the takeaway I want you to remember. At some point in time, it makes sense to walk away. And they didn't walk away. They wanted to make the deal. I don't know if you're calling it enabling, but you get close to your customers and you want to make it work. And so they did a number of things. What's scary about this situation is the entire staff got arrested. So not only do you have the president getting arrested, you have staff. And this is the first time I've seen this. The government is getting much more aggressive in going after these type of lenders. So relationship managers are loan closers. What happened was, these are some of the things they did. Department of Justice says $10 million worth of funds. What the crime was, they lied to the government. They have an email from 2009 from one of his people saying, Carrie, I got it done. Oh, Carrie told her to work her magic. And she said, I got it done because I fibbed to the SBA. Be careful what you put in emails. This was 10 years ago. She was the smartest person in the room. Trade shows, she would go and she would have 4 booths, premium sponsorship, and brag personally to me about what a great employer she was because she took her entire staff to the Caribbean every winter. You know, that's not a red flag, I don't know what it is. What the crime was, she did these loans for ineligible companies. She certified that these companies were eligible for SBA. She knew they weren't, and that's a crime because she lied to the government. The second part of the crime is when she submitted the losses to the government. She certified that they were eligible, everything was fine. So, you know, this isn't where she's looting the company. She's trying to get the deal done. As I said, I'm conflicted on this one. She was arrested. Typical. I have friends who are FBI, so I'm not anti-FBI, but guns drawn first thing in the morning. Rousted up at all 5 of those. They were arrested back in March, April. Okay, this one's an interesting case. This is old school fraud. Jade Capital was out of Mid-Atlantic, predominantly in the Korean community doing loan packages. The whole thing was fraudulent. I mean, we have fraudulent financial statements, fraudulent tax returns, fraudulent everything, and fraudulent projections. So, what happened was he fled to South Korea. After 8 years, he got extradited a couple months ago. Now, I don't know how he got, I don't know who made the call to get him back, but let's just say someone pretty high up in our government said, we want this guy. I'll let you figure out who it was. Okay, this is what I want you to, we talked about, okay. When you see one of, I'm talking SBA, I'm not talking anything else. When you see one of these setups run, do not try to make it work. Where Carrie Agee got indicted was, she said, oh, pass payroll due taxes, we'll call it working capital. Oh yeah, we can pay out that student loan, we'll call it working capital. There was a recent Inspector General report that said there was a company that was in violation of the Clean Water Act and got fined $3 million. The lender made them an SBA loan, even though they had been fined, so which made them ineligible. We weren't paying off the fine, we made them a loan to this company that was, I'm going to talk about the Assistant Board Management System. They lost their guarantee, and they may very well lose their POP license. So all of these situations, you can do a loan, obviously. You can do it conventionally. You can't do it SBA. But every one of these situations directly resulted in an indictment for things. If the investor on the Nick Patel fraud had done Google Earth, they would have found the stuff that exists. So use Google Earth as your friend. Use it for your borrower. Use it for the bank. Nick spoofed a bank, I'm going to give you the details of it, saying he worked for this bank under a different alias. Gave him an address. The bank's office was there. It didn't exist. I would strongly encourage you to look at LinkedIn. If someone's on LinkedIn, I'd be asking why. I would strongly encourage you to do a social media review, Google searches. I had a call about 6 months ago from a guy, my understanding, working undercovering fraud or whatever. Yeah, he said, I'm a broker. My client lost $30,000 to a gentleman out of Florida. I Googled him. He had been arrested 5 years before. He came right up at the top. He'd been arrested 5 years before for a credit card fraud. So the consistent answer the question, does this make sense? Does this make sense? I don't mean to scare you all, but there's a lot. Fraud is becoming more and more prevalent because it's so easy to do, and these tricksters are getting more and more sophisticated. This is my personal... Oh, I'll take a break. I'm supposed to talk about news of the day. This will take like 2 minutes. We have a budget for SBA. CR's November 21st. These are the same due in. The big news, which ties into what I'm talking about, is SBA now has regulatory authority over lenders to fine them. In the past, SBA couldn't do that. And when you fine them, you can also disbar these lenders from the industry. That's why you, as a broker, if you take a fraudulent package to your SBA lender and they get disbarred, you're going to get disbarred also. The SBA has been trying to regulate the broker industry for years, and how they're going to do this through the back door by saying, if you're associated with a fraudster, we're going to take away your ability to work with us. Last year I talked about the new rules of only being able to be paid once, either by the borrower or the lender. Just comply with those. I'm not going to go through those, just that's becoming more and more prevalent. The reason why I'm a big fan of this is this is where most of the SBA fraud occurs. Is that someone says they're going to be putting an equity injection and they don't. And here they have a situation where we have supposed to be $50,000 and they give them a side loan for that. That's loan fraud. Jot this down. You should do as part of your due diligence, lenders, make sure your brokers are on this list. And it's going to come out, make sure your customers are on this list. SBA does not require that yet, and that's going to come out in the new regs. So this is sort of a preview. It's free. It's SAM.gov. You can type it in, and if they're on the list, don't do business with them. And don't get your name on this list. That's sort of pros. Now, when I want to talk about this is sort of interesting. Go to this website, sba.gov, it's SB data. If you want to know who in that market, and you can go to Dallas. I want to know who the top hotel lenders are in Dallas. I can do a sort of this, and I'll know the name of the borrower, which is interesting for refinance opportunities. I'll know who the top lenders are. So when I'm dealing with a lender that says, oh, I know how to do hotels in Texas, and last year they did one, I mean, the data's right there. It also tells you the outcome of the loan, whether the loan was paid in full or whether it defaulted. So you can use this for marketing purposes. You can use it to verify the volume of a lender, and it's good intelligence, and it's in a spreadsheet format. It doesn't cost anything. We used to do freedom of information and sell it, and SBA got upset with us, and they said, well, why are we letting Coleman sell it? They go away for free. So, anyway. I think this is a common one, but I will tell you, this is what J Capital did. Bank statements for borrowers were altered, counterfeit cashier's checks, fake gift letters, fabricated resumes, fake tax returns, phony interim financial statements, and of course, they charged a fee to both the lender, borrower. Fees were excessive. They even took ownership positions. So that's why today in this room you can thank J Capital for the reason why SBA is coming down and why we can't take a referral fee from both the borrower and the lender. It's not lenders who are getting ripped off. In March 2012, the USDA accepted audited financial statements from First Farmers, Nick Patel's company. The statement showed he had $37 million in assets, $12 million in cash, profit of $51 million, and he used those financial statements to get his USDA B&I license. Of course, they were fake, and all USDA had to do was do a Google search of that CPA, and of course there was no record of the CPA or the address. I put this in here, and I'm sort of intrigued by this, and I'm intrigued by fraud in a couple ways. I'm very intrigued about the lenders who enable their borrowers. And I understand that you form a relationship, you want to help them out, and say, well, we can cut corners here and there. But beware of those that put a target on their back. Nick Patel went from 0 to #1 in 2 years, which should have been a whole lot of red flags for a whole lot of people, but no one asked the question, how could this, I can say this, 30-year-old kid come from out of nowhere? He worked for Wells Fargo and Beach Business Bank, but he comes from out of nowhere, does $180 million worth of transactions. You know, how many of us in our room would love to do $180 million over 2 years? No one asked the question, how's he do this? Does this make sense? As I say, Carrie Agee loved to brag that she was the #1 provider. We talked about the retreats. She loved how I've been in her office. She and I partnered together on some stuff. But she loved to brag how great it was to work there and how well people were being paid. And, you know, sometimes it doesn't make sense. And we are in an industry, especially the lenders, is we have something called regulators who are jealous, maybe that's the wrong word, but are inquisitive of people who make a lot of money. Jade Capital was the same. They were the largest loan broker. They did all these numbers. A lot of banks got hurt. The program got hurt, and that's why we're talking about this stuff. A lot of this stuff could have been solved by someone stepping back and saying, what's going on here? Why does this? How can this one company do all this great fun? And the consistent theme is they get caught. There's no end game. That fascinates me also, is how they, it's not as, oh, we're going to do a one-off and $10 million, and I'll put that in the bank, and I'm set for life. No, I want more. It's truly a greed thing. All right, this is why I don't want you to do projections. And I think I have it all the way back. This is a case study by the SBA Inspector General. And the projections are, this is a startup restaurant. It was an old rail car, and they parked it outside of a movie theater. And of course, the movie theater didn't open for a year, and the company went out of business. Can I do it this way? No, I can do it. What the broker did was put together the projections and showing $1.9 million in revenues in year 1. Second year, $2.4 million. Third year, $3.9 with gross profit margins of 60% and net profit of 30%. And the Inspector General rightly asked, well, how is that going to happen? How can you have a restaurant that's going to have a 30% profit margin and no restaurant in the industry doesn't? And then they went through and they counted up all the chairs. And they said there's no way that could do that. Therefore, by definition, we did not have repayment. It's an ineligible loan. This wasn't a fraud, but this is a case where the lender lost the guarantee. And I'm telling you, if you're the lender and you have to go to your board in your USC credit union or a small community bank and say, you know what, we have to send a check to the government for $2 million. That's not good for your career. If you can see this here, I don't know if you can see it, but bbAmericas.com, they're out of Florida. The bank is Banco de Brazil. This is their website, sba.gov. Ron, a.k.a. Nick Patel, spoofed them and said, spoofed the investor, because obviously now he's in jail, so he now has to create, he's representing that he's with BB Americas. This is how he got one of the deals done after he was arrested. And his email is ron@bbAmericas.sba.gov. There was a phone number that Ron Elias provided Farmers Mac. 7. According to Banco de Brazil, that telephone number is not among the numbers owned or used by the bank. When agents arrested Mr. Patel, they called that number. It was his cell phone. So he's doing identity fraud. He's doing aliases. And he is, and this is simple stuff. Okay, I'm going to wrap up and take some questions. And, I love this one. When he was in Oklahoma City, he told his associate to contact Anna at the USD to tell her that, quote, Ron was on vacation and that his partner should be considered for the administration because he had no access to limited access to telephone and email. He was in Oklahoma City jail. Anyway, so don't lie to the government. Understand who they are. Understand that if you do one of those 4 things and you know that the loan proceeds are going to pay off delinquent payroll taxes, then you know by definition it's ineligible, and that's considered loan fraud. Definitely start incorporating Google Earth, social media audit. As brokers, I think best practice is verifying equity up front. Use the system for award management to type in and make sure that your borrowers, your clients are on that so you don't waste a lot of time. Use the sba.gov for a little marketing insight. Trust. Verify the documents. I'm sure you've all seen the fake documents that are going through. These fraudsters are getting much more sophisticated, and you need to take your analysis to a little higher level and answer the question, does this make sense? I don't think you should be applying projections, and you can. I just don't think you should. I would make the accountant do that. I would send them to SCORE, to the SBDC. They don't charge anything. There's certainly nothing wrong with, as a broker, you have a much higher level of financial sophistication than some of your clients. There's certainly nothing wrong with providing financial services, helping them put together their financials, put them in a proper format. But I wouldn't touch projections. And I can tell you much more stories of email spoofing and telephone spoofing, but you've probably all been there. And with that, I'd love to take some questions. Do we have a microphone? I see someone in the back. Yeah, I'm sorry. Can we get a microphone? Yeah, here we need a microphone.
We're coming.
Slow, Mr. Rosman.
Well, maybe can I ask the first question?
Sure.
So brokers have to sign a 159 form.
Correct.
Can you explain the idea, the concept of the 2-master rule, and what these brokers should do? I did gloss over. The
2-master rule is very simple. You can only be paid by one master. Your master is either the bank or your borrower. And you cannot take referral fees from both. And the borrower, what they're really concerned about is what Carrie Agee was doing. Bank servers charging a loan packaging fee. And by the way, the rules are all in the SOP and what you can charge. Don't be afraid about charging. You just have to document your time. But she was charging a packaging fee for both. And the lender was charging a packaging fee for one borrower. That's how this came about. And now they're going back and brokers saying, we don't mind you getting a fee. We're not regulating how much of a fee you can get from the bank. It's very clear. We're going to regulate, though, how much a fee you can get from the borrower. And how much the borrower can be charged for that fee. So the simple concept is you can take a packaging fee from your client, you can take a referral fee, but you can't take the two fees from the same source. Is that right, Mike? Makes sense? Okay.
There's also a website called samion.com. Samion is spelled SCAMION.com. And plug in the name of somebody you think might be fraudulent, and they've got it on their website. About 15 or 20 years ago, I had a deal with a gentleman named either, he has three aliases, AJ Tomaso, Antonio Tomaso, or Anthony Tomasi. As far as I know, he's working under the name of Viet Bridge Capital or AJTM Financial. On the deal I had 15 or 20 years ago, the Canadian equivalent of the FBI called me to see if I could put them in touch with this guy. And to the best of my knowledge, again, he is still in business today. I mean, Google his name.
Yeah, and go to the media, his system award management system also.
Yeah.
The Rockies got their name.
Yeah. After 20 years, this guy is still in business.
Yeah.
All right, we have one up here.
Yep, someone here, Mike.
Bob?
Yes.
Maybe me, but SAM.gov doesn't respond.
Bob, repeat it, please.
Here, I'll go back to the slide.
I tried 5 times different websites.
Here.
The answer is I don't know. That's what I got. So maybe down, maybe there's a government shutdown we don't know about.
Another great resource like Scamion is ripoff.com. Many of the lenders use that. So before you send something to a source, go to ripoff.com, Scamion.com.
Yeah. I would just Google System Award Management. Oh, by the way, I do a free live show every Thursday at 1 o'clock Eastern, 20-25 minutes, talking about these issues, talking about the news of the day. You're all welcome to dial in. It's primarily for SBA lenders, but if you have interest in that, just give your card to Joseph. We'll sign you up. It's free.
Other questions? Oh, we have one over here, Bob. Hold on. Remember Phil Donahue? Do you guys remember Phil Donahue?
Hi. Could you repeat the website for being able to look at past SBA loans that were paid off?
Yes.
Okay. What is that website?
It's under sba.gov.
Okay.
You have to search. What's it under, Joseph?
SBA FOIA.
SBA FOIA.
SBA loan data FOIA.
SBA loan down.
Okay.
Yeah, it's in that website. Sometimes they bury it because they don't want to make it too easy. But that is a great, great resource. It has loans. It has every SBA loan since 1950, whatever. And it's a pretty. I would use it to see. Well, Wells Fargo uses it. They'll go through. We'll look at all the hotel loans that have been on the books for the last 3 to 5 years, and who do you think their target is for refinancing?
So, question about if a broker suspects fraud, what advice do you have to them, Bob, around reporting it?
If it's SBA Inspector General, if you see it's a crime, you call the FBI. And let the borrower know, and let the lender know. I mean, it's no different than if you see your neighbor's house being burglared. What are you going to do? You're calling cops. Because what happened, and this is what's so sad. This is what, and I don't mean to be melodramatic. Let's see, where's Here it is. These four got caught up in Carrie Agee's desire to make deals work. And instead of saying, no, we can't do this, they're enabling. They got a paycheck. And they're going, okay, we'll work it out. So the takeaway on this, it's very easy to get sucked into this in the desire to help the borrower. That's what we're all in business for. We want to get money out to Main Street, but we need to do it prudently and do it according to the rules. And they broke the rules, allegedly.
So Bob, can I add to that particular one? I found it fascinating. We had actually a conversation the other night about that fraud it was entirely just to get the deal done. I think you're right. It was in part to help that small business owner. And in the best case, BankServe was earning 2 points as an LSP. So it wasn't like Nick who was stealing principal balances. It was literally about making a referral fee, or in their case, a service fee. It wasn't like they were walking away with a big fat check. But their instinct was, I want to get a deal done. So when the SBA said no, they said, okay, I'm going to advise my client to recraft it and do it this way. Yeah. Clearly wrong.
Yeah, I glossed over one of those. Make sure it's an SBA loan. Understand you cannot change that ownership structure 6 months for 6 months and then get the loan. One of her indictments was it was a partnership. They structured it as the president who had bad credit at 15% and 85% for someone else. And SBA said, no, we're not going to do that. So they resubmitted the application at a slightly different name as a sole proprietorship. And that is considered loan fraud. I'm not saying, it's pretty tough.
Bob, we have another question from the floor around the equity injection. So give a little bit more color on that. What documentation should the broker be doing? Should they be tracking funds into an account?
The rule is very simple. SBA wants to know where the money is for 60 days. And they want to know where the source of that money is. So if it's someone's E-Trade account and it's been there for a year, they're fine. They're fine. The problem that you have is with gift letters. And you need to know what the source of that money is 60 days prior to the gift letter. Having a copy of the cashier's check and the gift letter is not sufficient. The lender has to go back and say, okay, where'd this money come from? And I know, people will say, well, it's coming from Hong Kong. And, well, I've been to Hong Kong. They have these big things called banks and skyscrapers and the internet. We can verify this. So I, as a broker, the first thing I would do if it's a business acquisition, and I know you're seeing more and more of those, is pin down where the money's coming from. A great source is, I know there was a breakout session yesterday at the 401k rollovers. That's perfectly legitimate. So just go back and get the statements. But the problem is, you probably need to do a little due diligence to make sure these statements aren't photoshopped.
I have a question on the 6-month ownership.
Yes.
I've been involved in a transaction where the credit of my borrower was not good, and he brought in a minority investor, gave him 80% ownership. So my question now is the reverse. I have an acquisition where the seller wants to sell his business. He's going to take a seller note to help the borrower. But he also wants to retain a small percentage of the entity afterwards. Can he come back in after 6 months? Does the same rule apply in reverse?
That is what we call a gray area. I would be... The answer is probably, but I think you have to go and do your due diligence to understand that there was no implied transaction. What you're talking about implies that they're going to allow them to go back. Here's the problem that's going to happen, is the seller got a pile of cash, and now they want to come back in. And if I was the lender, I would have a very detailed memo why we're coming in. We had a situation we talked about in my show you about Thursday, where parents sold the business to the son, restaurant. They got cash from an SBA loan, and now son says, I don't want to do this anymore, and I want to give it back to the parents. And our answer was, well, what is the time frame? If it happened 6 months ago, I'd be very leery, but this is 5 years ago. I think you're okay. So I would be very careful about implied partnerships. And the other problem you're going to have is SBA and the lender are going to be very, very leery of these 15%, 10% owners. You know, we all know why they're doing that because they're credit. We understand that. But the lender has the right, in fact, we talk about that a lot, to demand that guarantee, or you can just walk away from the deal. And the other problem is now I'm getting deep in the weeds, but you have affiliation rules. Does that 15% owner own other businesses? And if he's the president as a 15% owner, who has control? And then are there other businesses we need to get their final interest as well? So anytime you have minority shareholders in that type of structure, I would be very, very leery of what's happening.
So we have another question over here. It's probably going to be our last one, unless it's something really compelling and interesting. On that comment, I'll just add in real quickly. The idea of equity ownership and previous owners and carry notes. Talk to your lender. Partner with a lender or 2 or 3 that you value. Talk to them through the issue, and they'll answer right up front whether they can help, or if it's an issue they have to get the SBA involved.
Yeah, and probably what the lender would do on that is they would go to the SBA's blessing, because the problem that you have with that transaction is if it goes into a default, the lender can lose their guarantee.
I understand what you're saying with can't get a referral fee from both the buyer and
I didn't say that. The government says that.
Okay. What the government says, you can't get it from the borrower and the lender. But brokers like me also do consulting.
Consulting's fine.
Consulting's fine.
Okay, yeah. But I would be very clear to protect your reputation, full disclosure, and tell the lender, by the way, I did some consulting. They don't have a CFO, so I can get their books in order. They don't have a CPA. So I did that and I charged $5,000.
Okay.
That's legitimate, but I would disclose it.
I think on that point, one of the favorite hot button issues is you charge a packaging fee, and the bank also charges the borrower a packaging fee. That's definitely a no-no.
Yeah, what SBA is concerned about is they're not concerned, and you can negotiate with the lender. They can pay whatever you want. They don't care about that as long as it's not being passed on to the borrower. So if you can get 5 points, get 5 points. You're not, but.
Any final questions? All right, why don't we go ahead and please thank Bob Coleman for...
Thank you very much.